Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now, for today's episode, we're actually going to be covering quite a bit of the walk up, and this is from from 241 to episode 250. But before I get into the nitty gritty details, there is a lot that I need to go through. I know that the last time I read through the story of Balm. Now, reading through the story of Balm, I felt was critical for the entire series. It's so important that I felt that it needed to be done. And at this point, I think we need to actually outline what is going to happen in the entire story. For this particular section, we have the whole story of the 10 Great Warriors, the 13 warriors as they really are. We have the story of Enryu, we have the story of Yurik Mizuno, we have the story of Phantaminum, and I believe that all of that needs to come out before I complete this next part of the tower's story. There's a lot that's going to happen, and to be honest, I don't want to keep breaking it up into small pieces. I have said that I do have this allowance to skip ahead when it comes to content in an explanation, even if it means ruining a little bit of the story, although I try not to ruin it so often. But if you're someone who wants to skip out all of the spoilers, skip ahead to about 5 minutes, because I think it's going to take me about 3 minutes to actually explain all this. So let's go. Okay, so originally entering the tower were the 13 warriors. That is Jahad, the 10 families, and the 2 other irregulars, so named V and Alan. So that is who entered the tower in the first ever entrance of the tower from the outside. They are also the first group who ever climbed the tower. Now, from this group that climbed the tower, V was one who would have given you the impact of being someone like a king. He had that type of personality about himself. He was the person who had the most amount of charisma. He had the most amount of understanding and the most amount of attachment to those around him. So that is who V was. Then we had Alan, who was the sweetheart of the group from what we understand. She could have possibly been a Rachel character in the group, and she was in love with V. So nonetheless, a romance brewed between V and Alan, and they ended up being engaged to each other. And at that point, Jahad proposed to Alan and she refused his proposal. We don't know exactly what happened at that point, but we do know that Alan and V ran away together and they started fighting Jahad and the 10 great families. Now, honestly, on the side of speculation, everything that happened in this part, we don't know what's going on. But from the judgment of it, I would say that it's more or less likely that Jahad did something at that point that made him an enemy to Alan and V, because they were still on talking terms when the proposal happened, and afterwards things broke down into a war. So he definitely did something, or something happened in that whole conversation that caused things to go awry. So moving on from this here, we get Jahad setting up the 13 month series and splitting up the key to the door into 2 parts. One part of the key to the door on the 134th floor is set aside in the Jahad rings, and the other is set aside in the form of the 13-month series, the weapons. Ashal Adwad forged the key into the weapons. So that's how it went. And when you unite all 13 months and the rings of Jahad together, you get the key to the 134th floor and you can continue on. Now, on this path, I'm actually going to talk about Yurik as well, and I'm also going to talk about his big chase. Now, you will notice that I'm going to give another heads up at 5 minutes for people to skip ahead, because I didn't manage to clear everything like I intended. Another 5 minutes might do it, so just heads up for that. Okay, so we'll be touching Enryu first, and to be honest, Enryu isn't such a big story. Enryu was an irregular who entered the tower after the 10 Great Families era, after Alan left the tower, which we already know from where the story is. If you are one of those who have just rejoined the story at the 5-minute mark, please note that the backup story is still not done. Catch back in at around 10 minutes. I will not start up the chapters till that point, so just a heads up. Sorry about that. It's just one of those things. Okay, so let's get back to Enryu. So Enryu comes in after Arlen has left the tower. The whole story with Arlen leaving the tower is what happened in the last part of the story. I don't think I have to go through that exactly all over again. We don't know exactly what happened to V. I suspect that V is still alive somewhere in the tower. I suspect that he might be Mashaya Lazlak. As crazy as that is, I suspect that V is Mashaya Lazlak. So yeah, that's something crazy. And on the same note, I also have suspicions that Arlen might enter the tower again later as Bam climbs the tower. And we might get some craziness with Rachel killing Arlen or something like that there, just for extra oomph to the whole situation. So yeah, that's the reality behind all of this. So yeah, Enryu enters the tower, and when he entered the tower, he was a very powerful irregular, and he supposedly has the ability to control 9,000 bang at a time, over 9,000 bang. Obviously, it's a Dragon Ball reference. Anybody who is in the genre will understand Dragon Ball references. So yeah, Dragon Ball reference over 9,000. That is Enryu. Crazy powerful. He's basically the Goku of the tower, or kind of like the Goku of the tower. And the only person greater than Goku would be Akira Toriyama. So somebody has to be Akira Toriyama for this whole situation. He climbed up to the 43rd floor, and he found that the Jahad worshippers had desecrated Arlen's home, and in so doing, he decided that he was going to rain down red Shinsu on the floor and destroy everything. The Rankers fought him, and he just obliterated them. When the Guardian, or the administrator of the floor, decided to step in, he simply obliterated the Guardian as well, killing it with the thorn, and the thorn was then broken into 4 pieces within the body of the dead administrator. So that is the whole floor of death. That is what created it. It was Enryu himself. He has the biggest part to play. Now, when he did this here, he actually gave them a chance to choose whether they were supporting Jahad or whether they were supporting Arlen, and that is a story which happened over here. We do suspect that back on the 28th floor, the Hand of Arlen was another shrine of Arlen's that existed in the tower that Jahad and the 10 families broke in the past. There is another situation all on its own. So we'll move ahead again, and we'll talk about Yurik. Yurik Mazzino came in the tower following the Axis, Phantaminum. Now, we don't know a lot about Phantaminum. We just know that he has climbed the tower, and he went into Jahad's palace, and he literally destroyed everybody who was inside. Now, here are 3 things that makes Phantaminum really, really dangerous, and why Phantaminum and Enryu are ranked number 1 and number 2 respectively, with Phantaminum ranked number 1. Right? Phantaminum is an Axis. We know he's 100% an Axis. Yurik could possibly be another Axis, and this could be the Axis's world that they're entering the tower to. It could be something confusing like that, and it would be something else in a whole other story that we'd have to read when SIU releases it. But nonetheless, everything that happens with Yurik is him chasing Phantaminum to try and reach the greater world, where the sky is vast and beautiful, and all the crazy things that he talks about, all of the legends that Yurik Mazzino brags about. And all of this is coming into play here on the Floor of Death when we meet Yurik Mazzino and we find out why he is here. He understands that Ba may have a destiny to take the thorn that was left by Enryu and use it to cut the king's throat, and all of this is part of what is going on over here. So we are to get the story of Bam. That is what's happening at this point in the story. It's all about Bam. It's more about Bam than even Rachel knows, right? Let's just put it this way. Rachel may know a bit about Bam, but inside the tower there is even more known about Bam that Bam doesn't know. And nobody else knows that Bam is a person besides possibly Han Sang-yu, because Han Sang-yu knows something about the prophecy. Right. Okay, so that is going to be the end of the catch up, and now it is time to hit the 10 chapters for the Walker. So we get back in with Mata and Hockney talking to each other, and we see that Garam is still talking to Bam. And we see that she explains that this is the place where Bam was born, and she explains the whole appearance of Andrew. So, Andrew appeared here one day, and red rain fell from the sky. And basically, Andrew said that all those who remain here will all those who remain here will be those who worship the false king, and they will stand in the face of death and die. And Jahad's fanatics attacked Enryu, and then countless spears made of red Shinsu fell on the battlefield. None of the people who had tried to attack Enryu could withstand his attack, and they dropped like flies. And the administrator of the floor was enraged, and he showed up and he stepped in to try and take out Enryu. However, he couldn't even take on Enryu, and eventually even the administrator fell to Enryu in his fight. Now, I'm not talking to the exact words being used, and that is when the ground turned red and the administrator was defeated. And as they say in this here, the administrator was defeated and put to sleep. The Shinsu lost its master, and for a long time after that, a rain of Shinsu is said to have fallen on this floor. And that's all that we have basically about it. So, a divine thorn able to kill King Jahad is said to have been left here by Enryu, and that is what people have been looking for on this floor. And we see that it said that it was meant for the chosen one from the prophecy. And we see that Bam is then questioning what is his destiny. Is he meant to follow this path, or does he have his own choice in where he's going to go? Then we see Hwari Yun starts talking with Yuri and the rest of her team, and there's quite a lot to go through on this little section, so please bear with me as you're not going to get many top class images in the background. I didn't think of showing Yuri again because, you know, we've already flashed her out quite a bit. And we see that Waryun says she has a personal grudge. Kun wonders what in the world is going on because he remembers from back on the test floor when she says she doesn't hold grudges. And we see that she explains that this is a pilgrimage site for all navigators, that's Grey Dwarfs and Red Witches. They have to pass through the floor of death. We see that Disha and Dija are explained here, and the fact that they came up with the spell to keep them in this place. They were immortals inside this territory. And we see that Heljo wants to break what Dija and Disha set up, and he wants to leave this place. We see that he joined the outside power, which is Fug, and that is how things went down. And we see that he intervened in the destiny of one of the Red Witches, and that is why the Red Witches have a personal grudge against him. Then we see that Haljo makes an announcement. He's the ruler of South City. And we see that Haljo basically is making a crazy ploy to fight with whoever is here. And we see at this point, Waryun asks Yuri what she will do. We see Garam says that he's the leader of the other side, he's stirring up trouble. We see that Garam is impressed at the fact that the other Yuri and the rest of the others are still alive and that they somehow managed to survive. And we see that Garam explains that the last Thorn fragment is in the city. It's hidden deep inside the spirit room. And we see that she explains that Bam is going to have to go inside and talk to the leader of North City. We see that Garam basically gives the options to Bam on which way he's going to follow for his destiny. We see that he starts to enter the palace of the Dija or Disha, I'm not exactly sure. Hockney decides that he's going to follow him, and we see that Mata decides to go with him. And we see that Mata says this could also be destiny. We then see Haljo's castle, and all of Haljo's individuals are basically getting into place, and we see Yuri jumping in to get into a fight. And we see that the members of Haljo's army basically start having mouth with Yuri at the end of episode 241. So let's get on to 242. So we see that it starts off with watch out mortal, you'll die, and they start fighting. And we see that the fight is going quite crazy. At this point we see thorns shooting out from the other side from Sachi as he launches his spell to get into the castle in South City by force. And we see that they're planning to wait for Yuri to ignite the 13 months. And we see that this is explained to her down in the Gaul City, the Gallstone village. So basically, you'd have to be an irregular, or you'd have to be someone with the ability to break spells in order to break a spell. However, the spell in this place could be broken by a very high level weapon ignition. So ignition weapons like the 13 month series should be able to break the spell that gives the people of the spell immortality. So we see that we see that what's the name? Waryun explain something about how you neutralize the spell, and we see several other 13-month weapons. We see the Black March, we see an orb that most probably goes to one of the 13 months, we see a bangle, and we see a white spear with braids along it and some kind of jewel at the end. So we know that's one of the 13-month weapons, and now we have an idea of 3 more weapons. We know Green April because we've seen the Green April before, and I believe we get to see the Colorless December. uh, yeah, Colorless December in one of the flashbacks. So those are all of the 13 months that we've seen so far. So there's still a few more for us to get to see. And we see that Waryun's whole plan was that if the 13 months kills one of the immortals, it'll cause an uproar, and the immortals in the tower will be totally spooked by whoever is coming in. And then we find out that Yuri actually lied that she has ignited the 13-month series weapons before, and now she's struggling to get them to ignite. And we see her whole lie with Evan in the past, and all of a sudden she's now fighting an immortal who could really hurt her if she doesn't ignite the weapon. And we see her pull out both the 13-month series at the same time. And we see that she asked them to please ignite just one of them. And we see that the two of them are there together. And we see that she's waving around the black march like a crazy person. And we see that the spirits of the 13 months give something very, very ominous in this moment. The day isn't coming up soon, is it? You see, so they have a promised time when they will gather together for the correct master of the 13 months. Now, we don't know who that master is, and I suspect that the master who they are waiting for is going to be Bam. And the master who is going to want to try and forcefully control them is going to be Jahad. So I suspect in the end it's going to be Jahad with 6 of the 13 months and Bam with 7, and it's going to be their crazy fight, and he's finally going to defeat Jahad in the end, take the remainder 13 months from him, have a fight with Rachel most likely in the end over there, and end up killing Rachel and opening up the rest of the tower for everybody to move through to higher levels. We see that the 13 months explain that Yuri can't ignite both of them. She must just choose one, because if she ignited both of them, she'll go crazy. Then we see that Evan gets involved in the fight. He uses his frog fisher, and we see that Yuri consistently insists on having both weapons ignited. She refuses to accept just a single one of the weapons to ignite, and finally the two weapons get frustrated with her and they call her an idiot, and they decide they'll just give her what she wants, and they ignite both at the same time. And all of a sudden we jump back to Bam, and we see that Garam is looking over Bam as he starts his descent. And we see that she hands over Alan's pocket to Bam at this point. And we see that Garam was saying she couldn't tell Bam the whole story. The boy may resent her later, but right now the problem is the test coming up soon. And we see that the rulers haven't been in their proper state of mind since the disasters that happened in the past. And we see that she's wondering if Bam really is the one who has prophesied. And we see that she says that if he truly is the one who is prophesied, he will definitely show them a miracle. And that is where 242 ends, and we go on to episode 243. So we see Garam is talking, and she says that she's met someone, whoever she's speaking to, and then we see that she notices the activation of 2 of the 13 months at once. We then see Ender Rossi, Huariyun, and Kun as they watch the ignition, and we see that Haljo is going to get involved in it, and we see that Haljo is wondering if this is the one that Karaka was talking about. Then we see that Evan notices that something isn't right with Yuri as Yuri starts attacking away with full power, and we see that Evan is forced to use his frog fisher to survive the first attack of the ignited 13-month weapon. Then we see that the immortal from the floor is wondering what in the world is happening. He can't recover. And we see that he tries to escape Yuri, who eventually attacks him a second time. And when she does, I think this is where the immortal dies. And yeah, the immortal dies, and all of them are like, what in the world is going on? And we see that Yuri is possessed by the ghost of the 13 months. And we see that everybody inside the castle is going crazy. And we see that Joe decides he's going to go out and fight. At the same moment, we see that Bam is descending into the castle, and we see that he's being attacked by some creatures. And all of a sudden Mata shines a light to force them to stay away from them, and we see that they keep moving on to the place where they need to be. So we see that Hockney believes that the reason why his eyes were taken were Haljo was convinced that Hockney could paint a person's soul into a painting and take it out of the floor, and he refused, so that's why Haljo stole the painting from him. So we see Hockney's whole story about how he feels that a piece of his is missing, a piece of himself is missing since his painting is gone. And we see that Hockney doesn't like his eyes because he can see the present and the future at the same time, even though he doesn't want to. And being an artist is all about capturing the moment. And every time he sees the moment, he always has a skew of the future. And he explains how it once saved his life, but he would have preferred to have died just to capture the moment. So a teammate of his had decided they were going to rob him for all of his possessions, and she was smiling for him, and he was about to capture that moment when his eyes saw her dead a second later. And as he moved, the attack that was meant to kill him ended up piercing his teammate, and that is how she died. And we see that they finally reach the area where Jisha is, and we can see that Bam says he can hear a waterfall, and he can sense the other fragment of the thorn. And we see that Deely is looking over, and he asks, are these the intruders? And he's looking over who just entered the floor. So we get to episode 244. We see that Mata wants to stay behind, and we see that Rachel shows up, and she basically is here to also try and get the thorn fragment. We see all this craziness is going on, and we see that Yuraha and Rachel came up with their crazy strategy to do this here. So we see that Karaka's plan was to have White eat all the souls of the people on the floor of death so that he can regain his old Slayer rank power, so he can help him capture Balm and have Balm melted down into the thorn. We then see that Karaka basically made a deal with the regulars to do it, and we see Karaka intended to kill Balm at this point, and then we see that Emily helped transport Rachel away, and they use that as the opportunity. And we see that Wagner and Miseng are walking along with them, and all of a sudden Rachel was sent ahead to get to Balm and basically warned that Karaka is coming along with White. And we see that finally Balm gives up on returning to the way things were with Rachel, and he flies up with the others to the door, and at that point we see that Rachel runs after and flies up on her lighthouse to try and we see that she tries to use the name Arlen Grace to bring Balm down. And we see that Rachel is basically trying to hurt Balm to get him to stop going. And we see that Balm embraces who he is at that point, and it really gets Rachel angry. She says that Balm is just showing off because he has this power, and we see that she wants this destiny for herself, and we see Balm tells her goodbye. And we see that Balm was crying from what Rachel said to him as he was walking away. And then all of a sudden he enters the room with Dija and Dealey, and we see that they start their whole speech there. And we see that Dija basically notices Hockney, who has his eyes. And we see that since Hockney is with Balm, he's allowed to take the test, and that was part of the prophecy that they had. And we see that Rachel says that she wants to take the test too. And we see that Dija basically says something that Rachel is evil. And we see that she is chaos and she basically doesn't deserve a chance. And we see Balm says that she deserves a chance. Give her a chance and see how it goes. And we see that the whole mission that's given to Balm and Rachel is they have to kill Haljo, basically. Then we see that Karaka is torturing Yuraha, and basically he says that she's put her life in danger. and she just needs to tell him where Jovial Grace is, and that's where episode 244 ends. So we start in episode 245 with Dija giving the mission to Bam, and he basically says that the two of them have to go and punish Joe. Whoever manages to punish Joe pass the test. And we see Rachel start whining already inside her own head. And we see that Rachel once more starts crying. You see, everything that Bam has done has earned him friends. Everything that Rachel has done has earned her enemies. So Bam has more help everywhere he goes, while Rachel has less and less help. She only has the help of the enemy of her enemies, basically. She doesn't have friends. She just has acquaintances. And then we see basically Disha explains what they're going to have to do, and we see that things are going crazy. I'm actually going to start skipping a lot of this here. We see that the immortals inside the castle are absolutely going insane, and we see that Ender Rossi ends up using Bong Bong to move around, and we see that the red witches are running around to get to two different places. One is deactivating the prisons. They're going to release Disha, and the others are going to cause a distraction so that they can release Disha, and so that Warrior can do what she is here to do. We see that Kun starts using Enako on these guys, and then we see Dealey decides to go along with the whole story, and he apologizes because they're being put through an unreasonable test. We see that Bam realized that something was weird with Yuri, and we see that that Haljo has some type of power that made him stronger. It's a monster that is attached to him. It's actually called the Red Drasa. Bam is gonna eventually absorb it, and we'll get to that in a little bit. We then get to Haljo's castle, and it's basically asking why they aren't attacking Yuri, and we see that Haljo basically drains the power from the immortals around him for disobeying him, and that's how he's been able to keep power. Okay, right. So we see that they explain the whole way that the Red Drasa works, and the fact that it can absorb their energy, and that Haljo is basically invincible over here because he controls the flow of Shinsu. And then we see that Wagner was about to attack Raka to save Yura, when we see that all of a sudden he hears a voice from the back, and it says touching a girl's hair like that isn't cool, and he attacks basically, and we see it's Yurik Mazino, and we see Wagner is expressing Yurik Mazino with absolute shock at that point. We then get to episode 246. Now, please bear with me. I'm not about to take this here slow. I'm going to be putting a whole lot of it together all at once and making this a lot faster. Yurik ends up confronting White and Karaka, and basically we see that he's here to sort out the problem he caused, which was the Red Dressa situation and Haljo. We then see that he's wearing a bracelet that reduces how much of power you can see from him. And we see that he can't use more than 5% of his power with the bracelet on. And we see that he ends up fighting Karaka for a few seconds, and it says to Karaka, he'll use 1% against him, and that will be plenty. So he says that his one finger is all that he will need, and you see Karaka goes in at him. And at that moment, we see that Wagner and Miseng start jumping for cover, and White notices just how dangerous he is. We see that Yurik says if Karaka can survive that one finger, he'll give him around 6 wings. And instantly with that one hit, it's basically evaporated. We then get to Dija's castle, and we see that there's a secret tunnel, a secret passage that leads between the two castles, and Dealey uses it to get Rachel and Balm in place. We then see the whole story about what happened to Hockney as it unfolds. We see that Haljo took his eyes, and that when he couldn't recover and get his eyes back, Mata brought him here, and then Dija gave him his eyes with the task that he should bring the Chosen One. And we see that in the past, both Mata and Hockney were Haljo's minions, right? And that Hockney is the one who found the Thorn Fragment, and that is why Haljo was so angry with him and took his eyes. And we see that he didn't tell Hockney of the mission that he had because he wanted Hockney to live a normal life and to make friends and climb up the tower. Then we see that Hockney decides that he's gonna go and see Haljo. And then we see that Hockney decides to go and see Haljo. So we see that everybody is agreeing and getting ready, and all of a sudden it's time for them to head out. They head into the castle, and we see that Yuri is still going crazy and killing everyone, and we see that Haljo is like Haljo decides he wants to fight Yuri at that point, and that's where 246 ends. We go on to episode 247. And we see that Balm says to Rachel that he knows that they're enemies, and once this little test is over, they'll go back to being enemies. We see that Haljo starts trying to bribe Yuri to get them out of the floor of death. And then we see Garam all of a sudden attack Yuri. And we see that she acknowledges that it's the spirit of the 13 months, the ghost of the 13-month series that has possessed Yuri's body. And then we see that Yurik is looking on Karaka, and he sees him squirming as his body is almost taken out by just one finger, and then he says that it was no fair for him to use a spell to evade his power. And we see that Karaka decides to abandon everything with his explosion, and he sucks White with him as he escapes. We then see that Yurik saves everyone: Yura, Miseng, Wagnan, and Traveler. We see that Yurik says why he's here. He discovered something called the Red Tressa and he gave it to Aljo. He's here to fix up his problem. And he's basically every lady's hero, is what Yurik says. We then see Bam and the rest of his team heading into the castle. And we see that there's a lot of running going on inside the castle, and everyone is scavenging around. And all of a sudden, we see one of Aljo's minions sees Dealey, and he starts attacking. And we see that Bam uses a Shinsu Black Hole Sphere, and he attacks him, and he instantly dies. And we see that they instantly notice him as having the power of a savior because he killed an immortal. It's a miracle, one of those things. So we get into episode 248. And we see that Rachel is wondering if it was the power of the thorn that helped him kill an immortal. But that is a black hole sphere, so that is the power of the irregular that killed that immortal. We see Dealey instantly says that Bam is the savior at that point because he knows that he completed the miracle that was needed. And we see that Bam just kills them left, right, and center as they approach him. At this point, we see that Kun decides to confront Waryun to try and find out all the lies. And then we see that Bam decides he's going to go and stop the fight with Garam and Yuri. We then see Mata decides to control one of the flying creatures and take it out at that point. We then see that Garam explains that the sister Yuram went on a rampage after igniting 2 of the 13-month series, and at the time she was assigned on a mission, and she ended up having to have to kill her own sister. And we see that the Ghost of the 13 Months admits that Garam knows a lot about the promise made between the Ghost of the 13 Months and Jahad. And then we see that Garam pulls out one of Alan's weapons, a cleansing bell, and she uses it to try and smother out the ghost of the 13 months. And then we see that Haljo intervenes to save the ghost from being pulled out of Yuri, and then we see that Yuri's body ends up attacking Haljo. At that point, we see Bam shows up and he snaps Yuri out of the curse instantly just by being there. We then see Haljo gets really frustrated that he's being interrupted, and we see that Yurik is looking up at Haljo and saying that he may even be invincible. And we see that Haljo is basically being taken over by the Red Rasa. We see that the Red Rasa is like the child of the administrator, and that's where 248 ends. Let's get on to episode 249. I'm really sorry for the longer format of these episodes. It's just that there's so much that goes on here. Like I said, it's like 10 episodes in one episode here. And we see Yurik explains that the Red Rasa is basically a piece of the administrator trying to be reborn, in that it's restricted in the scope of how much it can control and how much of power it has. He said that he gave it to somebody who had big dreams and high hopes. That was Haljo. He thought that Haljo had the potential to use it for greater things. We then see Kun finally confronts Waryun, and he says that she lied to them and that they're here for something else. We see that she does admit that she does have a grudge against Haljo, but that's not the priority which she's here for. She's here to make a trade with Dija for something precious. And we see that Waryun is here to steal the soul-stirring ladle from Dija so that she can trade it with Mother Rocco. We see that Haljo did what he did because he believed that the soul-stirring ladle was destroyed. So we see that Waryun intends to trade the soul-stirring ladle for another fragment of the thorn for Bam, basically. So that's her whole idea. And she purely used Yuri as bait. At this point, we see Dealey overhears this. And we see that he calls them intruders and is about to attack them. We then see Haljo is going on a rampage trying to figure out where uh, we see that Haljo is on a rampage because he can't find Bam, Yuri, or Garam, and Yuri is in like a total sick state, and she goes straight for Bam like normal, and Garam trips her over. And we see that Yuri feels like she has a hangover of sorts, and that's the way that she's behaving. Then we see Evan is wondering how in the world um, Garam Jahad is here on the floor of death. And we see that the moment she notices that Hockney is there with the eyes of Dija, that there might be a way to actually defeat the Red Trissa. And we see that Garam is being sent to go and get some help with actually Yurik Mazzino, and that Hockney is going to manipulate her to get Yurik to help, and that is where 249 ends. We then see Haljo is going more crazy, and we see that Yuri goes in crazy and tries to attack Haljo head on. So the fight keeps getting more and more intense, and we see that they're attacking Haljo, but Haljo is just not affected in his current Red Drissa form. And we see that all of a sudden he takes away all of the he takes away all the Shinsu from them, and everybody starts falling who is floating, and the only person who can float in the area is Bam, because he has a power that surpasses an administrator, the thorn that's on his back. And we see that basically the whole plan was for Haljo to chase Bam, while Garam goes and gets help for Bam from wherever it is, because Haljo is using an administrator type power. And we see that Hockney is guiding them and telling them what to do, and whatever crazy directions he gives, everybody is following exactly, because he can see the future, and he can see it a lot better in the presence of Bam. We see Haljo keeps chasing Bam no matter where he goes. We then see just how crazy powerful Yuri is as she tries to attack with just a physical strength against Joe. Bam catches her, and then basically he starts flying off with her again. We then see Garam is now where she was told to be, and we see that Yurik is hiding, and he doesn't want to get caught by Garam, because he is actually in love with her, and we see that he has this feeling that he's totally going to be rejected if she finds out what he did. And we see that he's been rejected by her multiple times, and he's been banned from entering the Floor of Death. We see that he does flirt with a lot of girls, but he really isn't interested in any of them. And we see that Hockney basically manipulated Garam into saying, "I forgive everything." What? And basically that it's a clean slate if you come out now. And we see that Yurik instantly shows up, and Garam and Evan are totally shocked by it. We then see Haljo is about to kill Bomb. And as the attack is being launched, we see Yurik shows up and he hits the attack that was launched at him. And we see Yurik confronts Joe, saying, "You changed a lot since last I saw you," and that is where episode 250 ends. Now, as I said, this floor has a lot to offer. The little bit that I offered in the start actually explores this entire section. Once they leave the floor of death, this is going to be the end of it, the hell floor, whatever you want to call it. Once this floor is left, it's the end of that whole story, and its story holds a lot of worth in understanding what happens in the tower. So for anybody who didn't watch the first 10 minutes, when we reach the end of the floor of death, the moment I say Po Badao Gustang shows up, you can go back to this video and watch the start, because that will explain everything that happened. So catch you all in the next one. Have a good day.